Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to build the homepage feed with posts from the users you follow. And what's going to be really cool about this is that we don't even need to write our own custom database query. Just the simple power of Laravel models and relationships can give us this exact data that we need for homepage feed posts. When I first saw that Laravel could handle this so easily, I was really impressed because I knew that, the Laravel model would be able to handle basic things like CRUD operations, without us writing database queries. But I thought for some sort of advanced, relationship lookup like this, like a homepage feed, I thought I would have to go manually build my own query. But nope, that's not the case. Laravel has this covered and it could not be simpler. So where do we begin? Well, our frame of reference should be a user or an instance of a user model, right? Because you're on your homepage feed, you're this user, and you want to request the data for your feed. In other words, if our starting point should be this concept of a user, that means we just want to go begin in our user model file. So in VS Code, just open up your user.php model file. And down at the bottom of this file, we already have functions like followers, following these users, posts. And so far, all of these relationships have been spelled out using the Laravel function named hasMany, right? A user has many follows, or a user has many posts. Well, right now I want to introduce you to a slightly different method that Laravel offers. So we're going to create a brand new function within this class. So maybe right above or below all of these functions we've already created, I'm going to create one right above followers. Let's say public function, and you could name it anything, but I'll name it maybe feed posts, parentheses, curly brackets. And now we just want to spell out a relationship. Now check this out. When I first saw this, I could not believe how easy Laravel made this. We can just say return $this, and there is a method in Laravel called hasManyThrough. Semicolon. So it's similar to the hasMany method, but it allows there to be sort of an intermediate table in between the relationship. So in other words, we're starting with the concept of a user. We want to end up with blog posts from the users that they follow, so the intermediate table is the follows table. In other words, we can't just jump directly to the post table. We need to first work with the follow table. If that doesn't make perfect sense yet, that's okay. We'll walk through an example in just a minute, but in these parentheses, we actually give it 6 arguments. So I'm going to spell out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with commas, and let's walk through what we give it. For the first argument, we actually begin with the model that we want to end up with. So our ultimate goal here is to end up with blog posts from the users that they follow. So the final model that we're interested in for this first argument, this would just be, post : class. The second argument is your intermediate table, right? The table that has the data or the relationship that you need to look up before you can get to this. So for the second argument, this would be our follow model, or follow : class. The third argument is the foreign key on the intermediate table, which in our case would be quotes, just user_ID. Right? There's that column on the follow table that controls the user that's doing the following. Let me scroll over a little bit. The fourth argument is the foreign key on the final model that we're interested in, so the post model. Now again, a blog post also has a column of quotes user_ID. The fifth argument is the local key. And again, in terms of like what is local, what is foreign, what's our frame of reference for what's local? Well, remember, we're working in the user model. So user is what's local. And if you could go look in SQL Workbench, but remember our user table simply has a column of quotes ID, right? That's the ID of the user account in question. That's our frame of reference. So that's the local key. And then the sixth and final argument, this is the local key on the intermediate table. So that would be the follow table. Now, this is really the only argument where I feel like there's room for confusion just due to the nature of a follow. So really quick, I do want to spend just a minute to make sense of what we should put here for this sixth and final argument. If you go into SQL Workbench and open up your follows table, let me walk you through an example. So in this case, I want to show you these 2 rows. These are an example where Meows a lot is following Brad, and then Meows a lot is following Barks a lot. So imagine we were trying to build the homepage feed for Meowsalot. So in other situations, we might consider this column, just the basic ID column, to be, the local key. But in this instance, we don't care about this value. This ID value for a follow doesn't really mean anything to us. Instead, what you and I are interested in is this column, right? Imagine if we were building the feed for Meowsalot. So we'd say look for any follow rows where the user doing the following, so this column is Meowsalot, number 3. Well, the values that we'd be interested in are the users that Meowsalot is following. So this column. So we're actually going to consider this column the local key for the intermediate table. So in other words, this is what I'm going to use for that 6th and final value. So followed user. So back here for the 6th argument, quotes, followed user. Let's go ahead and save this. And remember, we just named this function feed posts. So now we can just go back into our user controller. So if you search controller command P for user controller.php, I believe we had a function called show correct homepage or show correct homepage, right? And that's going to see, should you show them the guest homepage where you can register, or should you show them their homepage feed? So here's what I would do. When we're calling this blade template, let's just give it a second argument. So comma, and then we're going to build out an array. The array only needs one property. Say quotes. You could name it feed posts or pizzas or unicorns, but I'm going to name it posts. And then an associative array, so equals greater than. And then what do we want the actual value to be? Well, we would just call this feed posts method for the correct user, whatever user's logged in. So I would just say, call the auth function, look inside that, call the user function. That's going to return an instance of the user model for the currently logged in user. And then we can just call that function we just created. We named it feed posts. So I'd call that. I want the newest posts on top. So I'd call the latest method. And then I'd end it finally with calling the get method. Cool. Let's go ahead and save this. And now we can just go into this blade template and loop through this property that we named posts. So in our resources folder, in the views folder, let's look for the file named homepagefeed.blade.php. Now, currently in this file, we have the message that displays, saying your feed is empty, go follow some other users. That made sense for just a static placeholder, but we want to bring this template to life. So now we would still want to display this message if your feed is indeed empty, but otherwise we have posts to display. So here's what I would do. Maybe right inside this div that has a class of container and container narrow, I would drop down, and this is what I would do. I would say @ symbol for a directive, and I would actually call a directive of unless. This is essentially the opposite of an if statement. So normally with an if statement, if it's true, only then are you going to do something. This is the opposite of that. So only if what we say here is false, only then will we, display the content. So I would just, for the condition, say $posts, look inside that, and there's actually a method of isEmpty that we can call. So then below that, I would just put, placeholder. We can circle back to this in just a moment, but then we can call after that, a directive of else, and then after that, we can call a directive of end unless. So now here's what I would do. This text center area with the, your feed is empty message. So these 4 lines, I would just cut that, put that below the else. So right here, you could indent if you really wanted to, but then the idea is this is where we would actually loop through the posts, for this user. So instead of placeholder, this is where you could say, @ symbol for each. But to save some typing, I'm actually going to delete the for each and put it back to placeholder. We've already written the exact code that should go here. And what I mean by this is if you go to your own profile, this code, right, where we display a list of your blog posts on your profile, we can just recycle this code, this exact, display and format. That's what we would want to display here on your homepage feed. Just a different list of posts, right? So in order to save a bit of typing here, I would just go into my profile post.blade.php file, and I would just copy all of this. So from the div with a class of list group down to the closing div, I would just copy that into my clipboard. Back in homepage feed, Instead of placeholder, before we paste in our clipboard, I would actually have a heading level 2 and say, the latest from those you follow. And you could give that element a class of text center and margin bottom 4. But then right below that heading level 2, you can just paste in your clipboard. Cool, and remember we fed this blade template an array of posts with this name. This is the singular name, and then this code is the exact formatting we want. So let's just go ahead and save that. If I refresh, beautiful. So the Brad user only follows Barks-a-Lot. Barks-a-Lot just has this one post. However, in this window, I'm logged in as the Meowsalot account, and Meowsalot follows both Brad and Barks-a-Lot. So if I refresh on my home page, beautiful, we see the one post from Barks-a-Lot and we see the 3 posts from Brad. And actually, I'm noticing we would want this list to say, like the name of the blog post by the author username on this date, and we'd probably want this text to be smaller. In other words, this formatting made sense for a profile screen because you knew all of the posts were by the one profile user. In this case, we actually want to spell out the different users that you might follow. So in other words, here's what I would do. Back in our homepage feed.blade, so we have the strong tag, right, with the blog post title. And then after that, I would have a span. So opening span. And then I would close the span after the date. So over here. But on the opening span, I would give it a class of text-muted and small. And then I would say inside it, by, and then the username. So double curly brackets, $post, look inside that for user, look inside that for username. And then we can leave this on, the date. So if we save that, if I refresh, the Meowsalot screen, cool. So the title, by, the author, on the date. Really quick, let's test the empty homepage feed message. So in this screen where I'm Brad, if I just unfollow Barks-a-Lot, then my feed should be empty. So if I stop following Barks-a-Lot and I go back to my homepage, beautiful, my feed is empty. Let me put that back and refollow Barks-a-Lot. So if I just go back to the Barks-a-Lot page, click follow, cool. At this point, we have completed our homepage feed feature. Really quick, just a miscellaneous detail that has nothing to do with the homepage feed. If you go to an individual blog post screen, we actually forgot to update this link to actually point towards their profile. And we should also update this little avatar here to point towards their profile URL. So to fix that, we would just go into our single post.blade.php file. And for me, it's around line 17 or 18, but we see an A element and there's an image. So for the A tag, instead of hashtag, it would be, slash profile slash, and then we would just want the username. So double curly brackets, $post, look inside that for user, look inside that for username. Okay, and then I would actually just copy these quotes and then just use that exact same value for these quotes where it says posted by, and then just the text value of the username. So just replace those quotes, paste it in. If we give that a save and then you refresh an individual blog post screen, cool. Now you could actually click on this link. Let me go back. You could also click on the little avatar here. Beautiful. Now, in our very next lesson, we're going to learn how to add pagination to your homepage feed. Because what if one of the users you followed, what if they have like 500 blog posts over the span of a year? You wouldn't want to show all 500 on your homepage feed. So we'll learn how to solve that problem with pagination. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and I will see you then.